G'day. Is that really Aussie? G'day?
Yes.
We used to use it often. A more good day than g'day.
That's G apostrophe.
That's it, yes.
We like to abbreviate things, of course, then.
Yeah, I haven't noticed it with my name or anything, Milo and sort of Milo. But it's good. Great. Yeah, so thanks very much. We've got a great audience here by the looks of things, and I'm hoping that I can actually transfer some knowledge across. I guess where I got started on this was I got quite angry about the lockdown, and I wanted to know what gave a bunch of politicians basically the right to do what they did and destroy people's lives, families, etc., which we've seen in hindsight. And I went seeking information. I said, well, what are our rights? I've been a citizen here for a long time, and they didn't give me a little book. When I became a citizen, I got a passport, which was great, but I didn't get, and I got a beautiful citizenship certificate, okay, as a registered citizen. So I went looking, and I got quite a few varied answers from different people, and there's some very learned people out there, especially in the area of common law, which is what this constitution actually addresses. Okay? So I still couldn't get a succinct answer. So I've got myself one of these little books, you can mention that, one of these little books, which is our constitution. And I haven't met him before, Mr. Paul Fletcher. He heard me at the front desk getting these books because they wanted to know what my ABN number was I getting any revenue for it, etc. And I said to them, do you understand that this book is available to all your constituents, free of charge? Oh, but we only get 50 a year. Well, that's your internal budgetary problem. It's got nothing to do with what you should be doing. And he heard me, and I met him yesterday because I was also at another event like this yesterday where we had Warren Mundine and Tony Abbott talking to a group like this, probably about the same number actually. And they kind of agreed with the same things, the same sentiment that you just outlined with those three things on the voting. And that's very emotional type literature. But nothing to do with facts or solving the problem. It's all about emotion. So I guess where I'm coming from, I will be voting no. I'll declare that up front. And for the main reason is what I've seen through my research in the Constitution. To try and make this better for people to understand and get into this and saying, go off and read this, and then, ask questions kind of thing. It is pretty straightforward, but there's a lot of context missing in this thing. Okay? And so what I did is I put together a timeline from when it started in 1900, which was actually, the Act came out in 1901, 1st of January. It was signed off by the Queen at that stage, the Crown. Okay? And what really disturbed me is the inconsistencies with what's happened to our Constitution and things that have been done quite, some of them underhand, some of them I believe innocently, and I put that in inverted commas, but I believe some of it has been innocently done through bureaucracies, where people assume power that they don't really have. And it's just an evolution thing as the bureaucracy gets bigger and bigger. Things happen unless you've got an eye on what's every aspect of that. And that covers all bureaucracy. Okay? So there are assumed powers in bureaucracy. I don't think in the political side of things there's also been assumed things like preferential voting. That's not covered in the Constitution at all. And that's used to drop people into areas who are not actually voted on by the community that wants. So that's also in this Constitution. Okay? So I put that together and it looks a mishmash. This one's actually done specifically for you guys. I've got a number of versions of them, and some of them have got more in-depth discussion points behind some of the highlighted items. Okay? So I'll just blow this up a bit. So if I make this up a little bit, and we'll start at the beginning. So I started pretty straightforward, and I kind of set the scene of what our Constitution, where it came from, the intent of it. And I think the word intent is going to become more and more, I guess, used in common law. And I have seen a number of cases where even our Supreme Court judges have used intent as opposed to a direct translation of the words, right? And because if you look at the Constitution, it was based on the Magna Carta, it was based on the Bill of Rights, it was also based on British precedents in law, because it came from their common law. And it came from King James' Bible, which is God's law. And the reason we've got a thing called common law is that the kings still decided that they were above the commoners and everyone else, even above God's law. So we have, if you look at the King James Bible, it's very clear of the intent of what is freedom to a person, what is legal, what is not. And a lot of it goes back to your conscience. I'm upset with what happened over there. Or am I just going to walk away and leave it? As an example, okay? But my conscience says, no, I've got to do something about it. That's kind of the intent of this whole thing. If you look at the American Constitution, it's very, very clear. Most of those people know the whole thing backwards. Okay? That was removed, as you said earlier, deliberately removed from our education system. Why? You could ask yourself. Why would you do that? So, I guess I'm not the bearer of good news along this timeline, but I'm going to go through each one. I think I've only got 20 minutes, is that right? 15 now. Fast forward. So, okay, I also defined what a constitution is, and basically a constitution is pretty straightforward. It's a set of rules that you operate by, and that's what it's meant to be for the government. But when you've got a government who, the Prime Minister right now, has broken our constitution, he's not followed due process for a referendum. A referendum is meant to be generated by the people, not a politician. Okay, so I'll go more into the yes-no vote later on, with no issue, but anyway, so this is the timeline, and down here I've got definitions of, there's different definitions of what a constitution is, okay, but the reason I put this in is that you've got to understand before this constitution came out, we had state constitutions. Okay, that bewildered me during the lockdowns, why we had different states with different responses. And then I realized they had reverted back to what was convenient for them. So, Scavo, who was the Prime Minister at the time, didn't have the power over those states. They were operating on their constitutions. Now, their constitutions are meant to be under the major constitution. I think that's what we're beginning to have. This overrules any of that. And I also heard one of our politicians yesterday, as referring to the Constitution has equal power to the Supreme Court. And that's not right. This has the ultimate power. And that's what we're not standing up for because we've been fulfilled. Why take it out of the school system? Do you remember the days when you used to say, stand for attention and say, God save the Queen? We used to do it in Rhodesia, we're part of the Commonwealth too. And if I went to a movie on a Saturday morning as a kid, we stood to attention and said, God save the Queen, you know. Where's that from? And you say, okay, Queen's redundant, we want a republic, etc. Well, we nearly are a republic anyway, with what's happened to our constitution. There's a couple of constitutions around, and this one is a convenient thing they put on the shelf, almost like a corporate who likes to show their values and their commitment to whatever. So they brought out when necessary. Okay? But I don't want to go too deep into some of the stuff, but just to say that we could actually be falling under the American Constitution right now. Which is, because we are registered in Washington, D.C. as a corporation. Yeah. And you know, Washington, D.C. and the Vatican, yeah, and the correct. Well, you'll see what it's done. I'll go and help. I'll get to the wind up. I'm not going to be too long. So just a few things that did happen and people get a bit confused. This one, each one of these acts or a constitution alteration, they need to be cross-checked back to see whether they should have had a referendum or not. Okay. I've got another chart which gives you all the changes to the Constitution that we know of, and I emphasize that again, which they were happy to declare, but there's a lot that under the bureaucracies, etc. No one is keeping tabs. So-called constitutional lawyers have said yes, they have been. I'd like to prove that. I'd like to check that out. Anyway, that was the first thing that they changed. 1908, the first Commonwealth coat of arms, and a lot of people confuse this with a seal. It's not a seal. This is the legitimate coat of arms. And here comes the states again. They said that didn't include enough about each independent state, different state, you know, Victoria, a whole lot, okay? Queensland, etc. So that came out. The second Commonwealth coat of arms. And that's official, and all that stuff around there is meant to indicate individual states. So we are one. Okay? So we now got a constitution which is all going the right way. Until we get to this here in 1960. I didn't put names in here because I just want to talk generically about the politicians and the Governor Generals at the time. But the Parliament controls the GG by removing the royal signet on the Governor General's appointment letter. The royal signet, I would have a copy up there, but I'm not allowed to, because it's, you can't duplicate it. It's a bit like money. You've got to put sample across it. But the royal signet is something which is the Commonwealth and mentions the Queen, who's the Queen of the Commonwealth, not the Queen of Australia. Queen of the Commonwealth, okay? And they changed that. Did you have a referendum on that? One of the guys who old enough, I think. So the essence of that is quite quick, is that once they changed that, every Governor General was actually swearing an unlawful oath. So this shattered me, man. I'm the new boy in the block. They actually, the way they've set it up, they actually report to the Prime Minister, as opposed to the head of the Commonwealth, the Queen or the King, now the King, Charlie. Yes. So that's why you heard that it was almost a joke when ScoMo was being sworn in. Do you remember that? There was that hiccup with the wording and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, but all that came to, I didn't know that at the time, by the way. So every member of Parliament has not signed the correct oath either. So they think they are, and I think a lot of them don't understand. I think it's innocent. I do believe that. Even though they're politicians. But I do believe that. So other things that happened in 1966, we changed to decimalisation. Do you remember that? We went around the whole Commonwealth. To be cool in the world, you had to get decimalised. We did it in Rhodesia, South Africa did it, they were still in the Commonwealth at that time. Botswana, all those countries around where I grew up. However, and this didn't happen at the same time, but notice the fact to blow that up. A little bit more. Can you see how sneaky they got here? So you see, there's the decimalisation money, went from pounds, shillings and pence, and it said, read at the top, Commonwealth of Australia, $20. Here's the new ones. Here's a $50 note. I couldn't find a $20 note because they do protect them quite well. This is Australia. And even the new ones just say Australia going upwards like that. Okay? Whose money is that? Are we a republic? What is it? Should be Commonwealth of Australia. That's who we are. It's not part of it. We had two referendums to become a republic, and we never did. We rejected them as a country. Okay, so I'm just going to touch on the big things here. So that gets worse. This one really got to me because I met a lot of your guys when we were serving in the Rhodesian Bush War. A lot of Aussies came across to the our war, but when Vietnam finished. But Vietnam unlawfully conscripted our young men to go to war in Vietnam to fight against the people Australia had no quarrel with at all. It wasn't our issue. You could say generically, oh, we were stopping the spread of communism or whatever. Make an excuse. They were each given collateral. They were given a price. Yeah. So, a price. And that's how they paid off loans. So if you put in 100,000 soldiers, they're each worth X amount of money, and that paid off loans to the US. Makes you feel good, eh? Okay, then we heard this earlier, the Royal Style and Titles Act removed a whole lot of stuff on the proper processes and seals, etc., that would make us part of the Commonwealth. It was removed by Mr. Whitman. And then he changed things, whereas the people, and registered his constitutions to a private corporation registered in the USA. So a lot of that is hidden. You've got to dig down. I've dug down through. The best information I got was actually from the British archives, because they document everything. And the Aussie ones have been played with a little bit, but I did find another website about 3-4 months ago, which has also got a lot of the original stuff in it. So a lot of this takes time, as you can imagine, cross-checking.
The Queen of Australia.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's referred to in a number of documents, Queen of Australia. There is no such thing as the Queen of Australia. It's correct, yeah. Take the Queen out of our Constitution. That's exactly what it's all about. The Queen, at the time, he created a Queen of Australia, a name on that corporate registration. The Queen of Australia is not a living woman, owns no land, and has no power. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? I mean, what a great country we live in. And it's, and then we had, sorry, I missed this one here. Bob Hawke. I've met Bob Hawke a few times. When he retired, our company used him as a lobbyist to get into government areas and so we could go and work with. Interesting fellow. Bob Hawke created and enacted the Australia Act. I won't go through each one of them, but he actually hoodwinked the Queen. She was up to it. He asked her to sign this document for this change. She said, have you had a referendum? And he didn't answer directly. So she signed the top of it only. She didn't sign where she should sign it. He then signed it and put it into law, but he didn't use his full name. He used Bob Hawke. It's not his legal name. So all of this is backed up by evidence, by the way. So I'll just summarize this point quickly. Are all acts and legislation passed, are they constitutional? I'm just asking questions. Foreign troops on Australian soil indemnity. There was a rumour that was done at the time of COVID, that any foreign troops that came here were granted indemnity. Now, I haven't proved that entirely yet. Yeah, that's where it started. Is each state under a pre-Australian Constitution Act during COVID? I can't prove it, but the acts and the way they've done things, why couldn't I go to Western Australia? My passport, Australian passport, says I've got free travel throughout this country. And here's a desperate Dan, and what's his name in Western Australia, saying, no, you can't come. Yeah. So anyway, I brought up a whole lot of questions here, okay, about our constitution. And then I just decided, okay, I will just add this in the voice. These are some of my points, some of other points. The Constitution belongs to all Australians. Once you set something in the Constitution, it's pretty much set in stone. It should be. We'll take another referendum to change anything. We've got a lobbying like people are doing right now. One group should not have a separate part of the Constitution. We are all equal Australians. And I know that I get supported by a lot of the original people here as well on that basis. And I, having come from Africa and seen what happens over there with dictators and you name it, we cannot allow that to happen. We are all together. This is all together. The whole thing, I think it's unlawful because he hasn't followed due process. And he's got no details. So what are we signing up for if you're saying yes? Government to give you what they've done before? Because if it goes into the Constitution, every word has got to be agreed. Every word. There can't be any nuances or anything. And the other part that came up on that is there's unlimited scope. They're talking about a committee or executive committee or whatever they're talking to. Is that going to be elected or selected? So then where do you stand? You've now got a third tier of government to do anything. It's got no bounds. It's got no boundaries on it. I found this duplication because I've been looking at the National Indigenous Australians Agency. Is that right? It's still called that. But they've just been granted $4.3 billion for this coming year. They are doing the same thing as the Voice is meant to do. Why would we change it? If that's not doing the job like it should be, getting to the grassroots of the people out there, then let's remove those corporate buggers in the way. Okay, that's me.